All right, welcome everyone to Fireside Chicago, where we host fireside chats with prominent leaders from Chicago's business community, live on Zoom every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 Central Standard Time with Q&A. I am your host, Tim Shum. Today we have Reid Lappin on the show. He is the founder and CEO of Vokal Interactive. Before we get to Reid, I just wanted to highlight some of the past guests, future guests in April for the show, in case you want to dial into those. Last week, we had Troy Henikoff, who is the managing director of Math Venture Partners, on the show. We talked a lot about how to navigate through the COVID-19 crisis. If you're a business leader, if you're a business owner, if you're anything from managerial level up to C-level, really interesting show, really interesting insights. We're going to put that on YouTube later in the week. So check on that on YouTube Thursday, Friday, Fireside Chicago, Troy Henikoff. Next week, we have Matt Kunkel, co-founder, CEO of LogicGate. LogicGate is one of the fastest growing B2B SaaS technology companies in Chicago. They raised a ton of money over the last 18 months. We're going to be speaking with Matt on Tuesday. Thursday, we have David Loisel. David's the founder of his own talent consulting firm, Lohi. He's a subject matter expert in anything talent management, talent acquisition, human resources. We're going to be talking unemployment, jobs, how to navigate this COVID experiences if you're out of work, looking for your next opportunity, or if you're a human resources or talent leader. Next, we'll have Nick Moran. Nick is the founder and general partner of his own venture capital firm, New Stack Ventures. He's also the founder and host of the Full Ratchet podcast, a podcast centered around startup investing that he started years ago and has a huge audience. Really interested to speak with Nick about his insights in the venture capital community surrounding COVID-19. And then last but not least, Jeff Rossett, founder and CEO of Sales Assembly. For those that know Jeff, if you don't know Jeff, he's one of the most well-networked folks in the Chicago tech scene. So whether it's his clients, his networks, his friends are very, very dialed into every stage of the technology community here in Chicago. We're going to be talking to Jeff Rossett. Our guest today, as I mentioned, is Reid Lappin. Excuse me. Reid is the founder and CEO of Vokal Interactive. Founded in 2009, Vokal is a digital product growth consultancy focused on optimizing mobile products and customer experiences for clients from startups to the Fortune 500. Reid, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Tim. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just trying to hang in there. It's, what is it, April 14th. I've been theoretically home since March 11th. Which is like crazy to say. It's gone by like fast and slow. At the same time, how are you holding up?
Totally. Yeah, the same. Everyone's doing well. We're healthy. So that's first and foremost. But yeah, good. It's been pretty amazing just, hearing the stories of how resilient people are. And we've certainly seen it within our own business. So just trying to keep things as normal as possible, but trying to find moments of having fun and some laughter, pulling the team together and things we're doing with our family. So we're good.
That's good. Yeah, it's an adjustment, isn't it? I think, there's so much going on like in our own little bubbles in our own little lives, but there's so much going on outside. And there's this like, I don't know about you, but I have this kind of dynamic where, whether it's like, I need to protect the family, I need to protect the business and the employees, I have to stay in tune with what's going on out there, how it's affecting the economy, how this thing is affecting health, people, how do I forecast things? But at the same time, it's also like, it gets to be like depressing, right? Where you almost have to like turn it off every now and then. And, I found myself like the first couple of weeks there, just getting way too kind of ingrained in some of the negativity that's kind of going on. And, I tend to try to focus on some of the positive things that are out there. How about you?
Totally. Yeah. It's, you've got to pay attention to it because, as leading in business, you've got to be playing out the various scenarios and trying to understand what decisions need to be made, how to model this and forecast, particularly when there's so many unknowns. So there really is no right way of doing it. So then you need to kind of create a few different paths in terms of how you're planning. But at the same time, I think my number one job has just been to protect our team and their families, and knowing that many folks in the world have it so much worse. Money's just not flowing out fast enough. People are losing jobs left and right. While we haven't had to make any hard decisions now, we've certainly had the discussions with the organization, with our team, to let them know how we can see this playing out and what the things that we're doing to kind of take action and do our best to protect against it. So yeah, it's definitely been depressing to watch, but it's a global battle, and we're all in it together. So I think that there's some, not necessarily peace of mind, but I think it's a lot easier to get your arms around it, knowing that everybody's fighting this together, and we've never seen the world go through something like this or pull together in this way. So I think that there's also a lot of light and a lot to kind of be proud of as a country and being on this earth at this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great perspective. Now, I mean, this is definitely a recessionary environment. Regardless of what you think the predictions are, I mean, we're there, and I think there's uncertainty on how bad it's going to be, how long it's going to be. Is it going to be a V-shaped recovery, a U-shaped, an L? That being said, this happened 10, 11 years ago, 2008, 2009. There was a recessionary environment. Now, you could make the argument that this is similar, this is going to be totally different. Regardless, operating a business in an environment where, like you said, money's not flowing fast enough, we're going to enter an high unemployment kind of environment. You started Vokal in 2009, kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy for us, the attendees, to say like, wow, that was crazy. Like, why didn't you wait? That seemed like the worst possible time. So we've talked about this, but walk everybody through, your story, the founding of Vokal in 2009. And, we'll kind of get into where you're at today and what you're doing for clients, but talk about those maybe first couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those scenarios where you'd rather be lucky than good sometimes. I was finishing up my junior year of college when the iPhone came out, and so I just, I'd been thinking through a lot of ideas while I was in school. Didn't necessarily say I tried to start a few businesses, but was always kind of tinkering on ideas. And a very simple idea came is like, will businesses be investing in apps at that time on iOS? Android wasn't a platform. And so for me, I think like the lucky piece is that I was in school. I didn't have a family. I didn't have a full-time job, so I didn't have a lot to lose or to risk. And we, picked a really good platform to move on, which was mobile, kind of this modern push of mobile apps. Mobile apps had been around for some time, but this was kind of a new experience to users, and became the fastest growing digital platform that we've seen. So I think the luck really came with just the timing, where I was in my life. The fact that I had been thinking through ideas and had that entrepreneurial spirit. And the fact that we picked mobile. I remember, the story I share with folks is that we were featured on a CNBC special called Planet of the Apps. And they followed us around, just like the kind of the myth of like submitting to the App Store, and is the app going to get in or not? And kind of the undertones of it was, are apps just a fad, or is it going to be something that we adopt at scale? And you look back now, and the statistics around mobile and how much time we spend on our devices, and I think mobile became the most popular device for humans in 2019. So we grew really nicely the first 4 years. I mean, we just, again, got very fortunate that we got onto a platform, became very good at what we were doing, had a really nice value proposition, and the market demand for it was insane. I mean, we also started a school a few years later that we exited, that became one of the largest training platforms for mobile app design and development. So again, it just kind of, we really hit the time right, and then executed a lot of the right things. So it wasn't, I'd say, for us, not having a lot of infrastructure, being young, having a young team, and just not having a lot to risk didn't really make it something I thought too much about. But yeah, in hindsight, it was kind of a crazy time for most to be considering starting a company.
So you were focused on building mobile apps. And I think you're right. Like, I remember that time when the smartphone came out, it was like, yeah, there's an app for this and there's an app for this. And like, if you were,
right.
if you weren't native to it, you're like, oh, what's this app stuff? And then you got the iPhone, and then like, okay, now I get this thing. It was around that time, it sounds like, that you had started the business. You might've had some insight into kind of what's going on, but what was your customer base at that time? And did you even realize that there was a recessionary environment going on at the time?
There was a lot of startup, a lot of early stage ideas to begin with. And I'd say, like, as you moved, I think where the platform really started to take is when we not that we were recovered from the recession, but I think we started getting a little bit more confidence in terms of where the economy was going. So, around late 2010 is when we started to pick up some Fortune 500, Fortune 100, started to move into larger enterprise, which was good timing. I mean, startups, typically need to have these skill sets in-house. They either, can't pay their bills after a period of time, or they are acquiring their own talent, which we learned and moved on pretty quickly. So the customer base was very broad. It was everybody from, I remember we had a guy named Tayson Day. It's funny you asking these questions, because it kind of takes me back through memory lane, who at the time was one of the largest YouTube stars. He did a song called Chocolate Rain, for anyone that had heard of that. And so
I
this
know
was
exactly
2009.
who he is. Yeah,
Yeah.
no other further explanation needed. I was one of his first subscribers. Watched it all the time.
That was one of my favorite
That's
customers
hilarious.
to have. But we saw a lot of funny things then, for sure.
That's awesome. Very cool. So maybe it's probably a good time to just talk a little bit about what you're doing at Vokal now, what problems that you're solving for customers and clients, what your team is working on. A lot of the folks that are attendees today are from the digital community that maybe you brought through your marketing efforts. And a lot of that, the folks that are on today are just like general, folks that are just interested in business in general. Talk about Vokal and some of the stuff that you're doing for clients.
Yeah, so where we're at today, when you look at when we started in 2009, I'd say, like, with technology, generally speaking, it was like, if you had technology and a mobile app and you were first to market, you'd win. And then it kind of moved into this whole notion of, human-centered design and user experience. And it was, if you had kind of a better designed mousetrap, you would be the leader and win. And then, where we've seen technology come today, you've seen so much venture money get poured in. You've seen so much investment from corporations into digital platforms and products, and just our own adoption and consumption of digital. It really is about, how you deliver value to users, how do you introduce them to that value, and how often can you get them coming back? So it's, how do you get users to your platform and to experience that value as quick as possible, and then keep bringing that back into their lives, which is a pretty hard sport to play, frankly. And if you don't have a team that has been there and done that, particularly for these larger enterprise or these middle market organizations, they're really stuck in kind of like this feature factory mode of just building, and building in digital is super expensive. So where we've really found an opportunity for Vokal and how we're going to market is, I've brought on a lot of folks from a handful of folks from the venture community, private equity, that lead kind of our business strategy side. And then from a product perspective, we've really tried to make investments into folks that either have been entrepreneurs, that have raised capital, or have seen hyper growth. So we brought some folks on from like Reverb, G2, some other organizations here local in Chicago. And what we've really tried to do is marry that with the design and development talent that we have, and really help middle market organizations get more competitive with performance metrics for anything in the digital space that lives at any stage during the product life cycle. So I think these companies, certainly are no longer on the sidelines when it comes to thinking about not only how to digitize their core, but also looking into adjacent opportunities. And so, what we try to do is really bring, a venture lens, but still kind of think about metrics and scale from an entrepreneur standpoint, and how can we help these companies, again, just get more competitive with their performance metric across their digital portfolio. So, we see ourselves as a growth consultancy. We try to kick our projects off in spreadsheets versus kind of fancy decks, and really think about how do we benchmark an organization's current position, and, how do we chart roadmaps and find not necessarily moonshots, but like, quick wins to demonstrate growth. Because I think this notion of digital transformation, is so big to think about, and people talk about kind of best practices, and we view things kind of in a lens of next practices, which is really more of a metric-driven sport.
So I'm thinking of, all right, Airbnb, Uber, Locally, Spot Hero. These are like digital native companies. They started from scratch with the vision of what you're talking about. How do we acquire customers? How do we keep them on the platform? How do we optimize this over time? You're kind of talking about taking talent that understands that life cycle and then applying them to Dunder Mifflin paper company that might not be as digitally sexy, understands that, and then really help them kind of optimize their product, their user experience, so on and so forth. Is that kind of a fair thing to say if we were at a barbecue and I'm just not in the digital world, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, like most of these organizations, what we find, for the right type of customer, so I don't want to kind of cast this amongst everybody in kind of this mid-market or what I'll just refer to as like non-digital native organizations, really don't understand their growth metrics and growth levers. And they often, kind of there's this wall that sits between their product group or the IT and marketing. And so in our world, we're trying to run a lot of marketing experiments to find growth channels. Again, how do we bring people to the product? And then from a product perspective, how do we introduce them to that value and kind of keep that growth loop going? So it's really helping these organizations understand what their growth metrics are, what metrics are important, and then what are the levers and what are the things that we can be doing, such as like A/B testing or some of the growth marketing tactics to really find a better capital efficient way to deliver growth and to get them out of the train of thought of thinking of things just in the form of features or platforms or pure technology, if you will.
Understood. Now, are these like, do you have like a certain industry that you're focused on? Are these product companies? Are these service companies? Does it not matter? How should we be thinking about, some of the problems that you're solving for clients?
Yeah, so it really, we do a lot in consumer good, durable good. We've done a lot of IoT, certainly a lot of professional services. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to get pretty disciplined on what problems we're trying to solve for what types of businesses. But, what I would say generally is that, there's not a single company that can really be on the sideline with making investments into digital. And if you haven't done it and you haven't done it well and you don't have a team that has seen, that hyper growth from early stage ideas to early, product market fit adoption to then, kind of scale, then most organizations are going to struggle to get there and struggle to figure out how to really make their investments work for them. So, what we found is that like our own product market fit is that a lot of companies that fit this form are having these challenges. So we've been in professional services, financial services. I'd say probably 60% of our work is in the B2B. And then, helping a lot of companies like durable good organizations that, maybe saw like Home Depot or Lowe's as their customer, open up their eyes to how they can actually start to interact with truly the end user of their product, which is a different train of thought for many organizations.
That makes sense. Okay. So let's talk about like this digital transformation concept a little bit. So I consider myself a somewhat of a neophyte, but I'm thinking, the internet came out, that was like phase one. Phase two was maybe smartphones, mobile apps, doing business online, doing business in your phone. Then we kind of got into BI, business intelligence, data became very big. How do we take this data, create insights to better our business? Where are we at today, and where do you see the digital transformation going, or the user experience for consumers or businesses going?
Yeah, so I think, again, like, I guess I'll try to think about it, in a few buckets. One is like, how do you find your traction channels where you can acquire customers? So the types of folks that are going to find value with whatever product or service that you're digitizing or bringing to market. How can you find like the right traction channels so that your customer acquisition costs are really well aligned and you kind of know how to get people to your product or platform? What I've always viewed is, and I think this fits with value as well as like what you can do with data. It's like anytime, so then if you think about a user that comes, you have kind of like your power user, your call it like casual user, your infrequent user, and then someone that's like dormant in terms of like folks that have activated on your platform. So trying to figure out, ways of optimizing to get more people to aim towards that power user, or frankly, to recognize that, the infrequent user is just not who you should focus on. And how do I get more people that look like that persona that really values my product? And then within that it's, I kind of look at it in taps and clicks. And so anytime a user taps on anything in your platform or clicks on anything in your platform, those are investments that these users are making into your product. And how do you take advantage of those investments? So, in one way, it's how do you keep bringing them back to doing that activity and understanding what metrics are important. So like, if daily active user is really your North Star, it's like, how do you align everything that you're doing to figuring out how you get folks to be using the product on a daily frequency? And then two, like, how do you use that data to personalize? Like the best example I give is like the simplest one, I suppose, is Uber. When I was going into the office, I would Uber to work and home every day. And when I would get an Uber around 5:36 in the morning, it always gave me my gym first. When I would get an Uber at, call it, 7:30, it would say work first. And when I'd get an Uber at, whatever time I was going home from the office, it would say home. So here over time, they took my patterns of behavior. They recognized my investments, the frequent taps that I was making, and they were happy to take my money, obviously. But they just, the reason, I shouldn't say the reason I used the product, but they prioritized making it much easier for me to do business with them. And it's small, but like using that element of machine learning to kind of put around, my behaviors and patterns is just a smart thing and a very achievable thing that you can do in 2020. So to answer your question, I think like it's about like how you get users to your platform, how you really kind of understand the right user type that really values your product. And then, from there, in terms of just identifying what metrics are going to be important to you, and then how do you use the investments that users are giving you to kind of give that level of personalization, that loop, so that your product continues to evolve with your user base.
Gotcha. Excellent. Hey guys, if you have any questions for Reid, scroll down right in the center console. There's a Q&A tab within Zoom. Type it in there. We'll get a few questions. We'll get time for a few questions towards the end of this. I guess, Reid, switching to 2020, 2021 predictions from your seat. I looked at this COVID thing. This hit everybody in a certain way. There's definitely some companies that are thriving, Zoom being one of them, as a result of this, but most got affected, in some sort of negative fashion where there's some uncertainty. I felt like small businesses got hit first. We started our business under 2 years ago. There was definitely like a moment where it got real very quickly, and it was like, all right, I got an emergency plan. I got to make some moves. You're starting to see mid-market companies start to make changes and moves, whether that be furloughs or layoffs or, shutting down business units, things like that. It's starting to affect some bigger companies that are not airlines, that are not, restaurant chains or movie theaters. How do you see this playing out? How you mentioned that you've done some research, or you try to do some research. How do you see this playing out, over the next several weeks, months into next year?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously going to be a new normal when we do come back, and we will come back. And there's a lot out there. I guess when I've looked at this, I've really looked at it from like how I need to plan from my business standpoint, because it's just way too hard to predict. And you just hear so much. Is it June? Is it July? Second, third waves. What do those waves mean? So, I try to focus on the things that I can control. And, what I can control is doing my best to, keep my team employed and to keep them safe. So, we had a call yesterday and I just had a very real, as you had a moment, just a really real moment with our team. And while we haven't had to make any hard decisions today, I let them know that, hard decisions will be ahead. And, that being said, we're doing everything we can, to not have to make those, but I do want to properly and fairly communicate and plan with our team and let them know that we're putting all options on the table, and that my number one goal is the health and safety of everyone, that's on our team and their families. So I think, as this comes back, I think that you'll see a lot more work from home. Like for us, if you don't have to be in the office, I'm strongly going to encourage that, team members are working from home. But I also want to give people the ability to feel like they can get out into the world, as some of these bans, these lockdowns are lifted. And we may only allow a certain number of people in the office at certain times. We may think about space differently in how we do meetings in closed corridors. So I think the big thing for me is still trying to protect, the people we have in every way that we can. And then letting our team know that like we are going to explore all options that help avoid, I would say, layoffs, right? I mean, but at the same time, we have to do everything we can right now to drive cash into the business. And we have to analyze and scrutinize every bit of cost. I mean, some of the interesting things that I've heard and that we've experienced in our own business is like, how many subscriptions and different platforms and tools are you paying for? Like, what are all of your expenses? Like, do we really need, like, I think I was talking to a client that was paying some astronomical amount of money for each executive to have their own dedicated conference line so that and really the use case where I was like, well, what's up with that? Like, so that they know their pins and the pin never changes. And it was an astronomical amount of money. When you look at like some of like Google gives it to you for free. I mean, Zoom as well. So it's like they cut something like 60 grand off of like an annual budget for like a variety of like pin codes. Right. But to answer your question on a prediction, I think timeline, like it feels like we're thinking towards July to trying to get the economy back. I think it'll be really slow to get back. I think that because money hasn't gotten into the right hands fast enough, the unemployment rates are insane. Therefore, like the ability for the consumer spend will not be strong. Organizations are going to need to really, think about how they bounce back too, and what they invest in and what they don't. So, I think that this is not a super optimistic picture, but it's going to teach us all that we've got to think and do things differently. It's also a great time, I think, to be entrepreneurial and to think of ideas because, not only, is this kind of level setting the board, from a venture and startup standpoint, but we're also going to operate differently as humans. And so what ideas and opportunities arise from that. And so I think that's kind of like the really cool thing. And so I'm spending a lot of time personally thinking on that. We're spending a lot of time organizationally thinking on that and trying to get our clients to as well. So yeah, that's where we're at. No, like, crystal ball and anything, but I think just like health and happiness and family is kind of where I'm really trying to stay oriented.
That's great that you say that. I think you're thinking about it in a very objective, pragmatic way. And you can't bet like all in a very quick V-shaped recovery. I think that's probably irresponsible for, especially if you're running a business. It may not be a super dark picture, but yeah, I think there's going to be a new normal here where you mentioned, remote working. I look at it and, there was a 10-year bull run where if you graduated college, or let's just say you entered the workforce in 2010, 11, 12 and beyond, all and all you've experienced is your normal is there's always jobs there. You always get a raise. You can bounce from company to company and things will be good. Like your rents will always be paid. I have an interesting experience, when I graduated in 06, like things were really good, same as they were the last 10 years. Like it was easy to get a job. I was a salesperson and a recruiter. It was easy to find, make money off recruiting. It was easy to sell things. And then like shit got real very, very quickly. And I think going through that experience gives me perspective, but I think it's going to trickle down to personal finances. You mentioned executives kind of shaving down operating expenses. Like you think that I canceled my Audible subscription that I've never used ever to whip out the calculator and do 5 years and like times 12 months times whatever Audible is, times multiple things. I think this is going to have, in all intents and purposes, probably a very, negative picture. As you mentioned, like things are going to be rough for a while, but I think this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned kind of through this for, from corporate governance to personal governance that is going to make the world a better place kind of coming out of this. Once we can get on the other side of this thing, for sure. But it's going to be interesting for sure.
Totally.
Let's jump into a couple questions that we got from the crew.
Sure.
All right. Let's go with Todd Unger's question. Thanks, Todd. Any companies, organizations you see that are really stepping forward in this time, leveraging their digital platforms, pivoting to help their customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, well, one, with that question, the AMA has done a tremendous job, and I've been following them pretty closely. And I think that, there's a lot of companies that, are on the front line from like an association standpoint. I think a lot of associations, AMA highlighting one, that their member body need a lot of answers. Like one company we were talking to is in the association space for fabricators and manufacturers, and so these are organizations that are going through a lot. And so I think these organizations that serve a body like the AMA, the AHA, they are working around the clock to get information out and get accurate, true information into the hands of the people that need it. So I've been super impressed to see that. I also, Cameo is a one that I saw something pop up on my LinkedIn feed the other day that they're giving all their proceeds away for a certain period of time. Their company's doing really well right now. So I've seen organizations. My brother, I'll give a family one, is distributing hand sanitizer. He's in the liquor and wine distribution space, and their business has done well with the grocery angle, but like they've shifted a lot of their trucks and their routes to getting hand sanitizer to places where they can. So I mean, that's the thing too, is like as hard as this is, you have seen so many great stories, and it'd be great one day to just like have a pure documentary of like this period of time that literally only focused on the light of this, because it's been incredible to have like our own personal touch points, things that my wife and myself are doing to try to help our neighbors and other families, our parents. We live across a retirement community, like things that we can do to help kind of give. And then just the stories that you have seen on the news or in some of your social feeds. But I think, a lot of the associations, I think, have done a great job, and they're really not sleeping. I mean, they're always on. So a lot of people are going to need a good break after this. So that's, at least from my lens, some examples of some really positive community work.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I'm like, things that are coming to mind are like, I mean, think about some of the massive pivots that companies have had to do. GM, whether they were forced or not, to manufacture medical equipment and protective equipment. You have downtown Wheaton. I'm worried. Me and my wife and my family, we like to go to downtown Wheaton to all the restaurants and walk around over the weekends when we can get away for a date night. I'm worried about that being boarded up. So there's a very, very strong effort to like support downtown, do curbside pickup. All the restaurants immediately had to find a digital way to do that, because like I'm telling you, the first few days was like really rough. You had to call, you had to place the order. They had one line, to get through. I'm just imagining somebody, with a mask on trying to take all the orders down. Within a few days, they did it digitally, and there's solutions out there that are already doing that. But you have to kind of change the way that you're doing business, or really operating your life as an individual, to kind of adapt to some of the changes that are out there, for sure.
Totally.
Troy Henikoff, our guest from last week, says, "Hey, Reid, nice to see you here. Sounds like you're hanging in and doing fine. Stay safe. Please say hello to Azure for me." So it looks like you had to take off, but Troy giving you a little shout out there for sure.
Thanks, Troy. Yeah.
All right, we'll do another question. Elaine asks, are there any surprising changes you've seen in customer behavior in response to the evolving new normal that impacts or / will impact how you are approaching app customer experiences and digital development? Maybe a question more for how your customers are thinking about that, or some of the conversations you're having with customers.
Yeah, there's so I guess in terms of the customers that we're working with, so for our customers, I mean, one of the things that we've seen now that's been pretty cool is like, so for companies that are in some of the consumer goods space, right now, everyone's sitting at home on their devices. So trying to get, like, I'll give you an example. We have a client bringing a connected product to market. And one of the things that we've done is launch like a handful. I think we did about 6 different landing page value proposition testing. So we're trying to understand, what parts of the market would value this product, and what value propositions wrapped around it are resonating the most. So we're kind of like doing some demand testing, if you will. And the results that we've gotten are amazing, because there's just everyone sitting at home, browsing their computer, in their social feeds. And so I think it's a good time to kind of if you want to get in front of folks or like test some value propositions and launch some quick landing pages and see, look at click-through rates, audience segmenting, trying to get emails, like anything in that like customer development realm. Now is a really good time to do that. So taking advantage of just the sheer amount of time people are online right now. And then in terms of like behaviors going forward, I think like, for the market that we discussed that we focus on is, there's got to be a really big push to thinking about how you make yourself a heck of a lot easier to do business with from a digital first perspective. So like with your customers and portals, and the challenge is you're going to have to do it in a really capital efficient way. So really trying to prioritize, how you think about these investments and how you think about optimizing for growth. You're really going to need to ask your team, if you work with consultants, your consulting partners to really, be extremely metric oriented and really, think about the benchmarks and the needles that you want to move and, align the experimentation roadmaps to those metrics and benchmarks. But I think that's kind of the biggest thing is that we're all going to be very comfortable after this, approaching any brand or service from a digital first perspective. You mentioned like food as an example, right? It's like, we have a handful of clients in the fast casual and we've actually been able to do an excellent job together in our partnerships, to really optimize those channels for growth right now when people aren't going into their restaurants. So I think just a more macro level trend of ensuring that you've made yourself easier to do business with, and that you are truly like doing things like A/B testing, a lot of marketing experimentation and some of those lower cost items that you can get really good value out of, because you won't be able to make the same investments that, I think companies thought they were going to make in 2020, because the economy was so strong and there was just a lot of money getting deployed into these areas that you're going to have to kill a lot of those projects and buckle down and focus on the ones that are truly going to impact and grow your business.
Yeah, that's so true. I think if you're taking the playbook that made you successful in the last 10 years prior to this, and then think you can just apply that and expect the same results, I think, those are the companies that are going to struggle, whether it's digital or not digital. This is a crazy selling environment for like B2B companies. We have buyers that are at home for the first time, thinking about business continuity planning. Budgets are getting tighter. You have, what we talked about, potential furlough or layoff kind of situations, but, business needs to go on for folks and you have to change your playbook up, whether it's your messaging, your product or service. What worked in a bull market kind of environment might not work the same in a bear market kind of environment. How do you have to change up your messaging to find value in your buyer's shoes when you're talking to your buyer? So, Reid,
Yeah.
this has been great, man. I really appreciate you carving out some time. It's always great to just talk shop with you. I've always, looked forward to our conversations. I appreciate you being our second guest on Fireside Chicago. If the attendees, the guests want to learn more about you or Vokal, where can they find you?
Yeah, I don't know. You have my email. If you want to just shoot whomever joined my email, if there's any more questions or if you want to jam and chat about anything, if I can be helpful in any way, frankly, don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn, not super active on other social channels, but yeah, Tim, if you want to go ahead and shoot out my information, happy to chat.
That sounds good. Thanks so much, Reid. I really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Yeah, stay healthy.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.